Hey BookTube, it's Samantha and I'm coming to you with another Top 5 Wednesday. And this one's titled Rainy Day Reads. Now there's not really a description for this, but how I interpret it is when it's obviously raining outside, what are the books that you want to gravitate towards or that you tend to read during those rainy days? So I have my top 5 that I may not have read them recently, but they're the atmosphere of the kind of books that I like, or they could be books that I have read multiple times that definitely fit that rainy day feel for me. The first book on my list is I Strad, The Memoirs of a Vampire. I Strad, Memoirs of a Vampire by P.N. Elroyd. This is part of the Ravenloft saga series, in where it's actually a Dungeons and Dragons book. Now, I had read this before I had even started Dungeons and Dragons, and I had no idea that Ravenloft was one of the worlds or universes that you could play in D&D. So I actually found out when doing my current campaign, the main boss villain that we're working up to defeat is Strahd. So I actually knew the whole plot of our campaign before we even started. Everyone else didn't know, but I actually knew because I read this book. I loved this book. It is, I mean, all I saw was this at the library, and I just instantly picked it up and absolutely loved it. It's the origin story of how he came to be a vampire. So most of it, he's not really a vampire, but there are some action scenes where he is. But it kind of tells you the whole story of how he comes to be who he is. Really loved it. Highly recommend it for anyone who loves vampires, anyone who loves D&D, just wants that spooky atmosphere. This definitely brings it. The next book on my list is The Cat Who Talked to Ghosts by Lillian Jackson Braun. This is a book that I've actually only read once. It's really tiny, so I'm actually kind of surprised I haven't read it more often because this is a book that I own. What I do remember from it, it's a very light-hearted mystery, and the cat is a main figure point of the whole The Cat Who series. There's a lot of books that start with The Cat Who, blah, 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 The Cat Who, blah, blah, blah. I do want to read more of them because it's just that perfect read for a rainy day and you kind of want something a little lighthearted but still has that spooky atmosphere. This hits the mark. I absolutely love this one because it's talking to ghosts, so it's even more of a little bit of that spooky factor. The next book that I'm going to talk about is one that I have reread multiple times. I only pick it up to reread when I forget how it ends. So I've read this book 3 times already, and that is Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. Now you might say to yourself, like, why would you keep reading it if you forget how it ends? But I mean, honestly, that's a good mystery, in my opinion, is when it's something that you really enjoy reading and you're hooked on when you're reading it, and then after a little time goes by, you kind of forget how it goes, so you want to read it multiple times over and over again. It's a really interesting plot where this woman just does not remember who she is. She wakes up every morning and just restarts, kind of like 50 First Dates, but in a spooky way. She started writing, she started keeping a journal, and every day, like this one says Monday, November 12th, every day she kind of writes on what happens during the day. And the more and more she writes, even though she doesn't remember, she goes back in her journals, reads them, and it shapes how her day goes. And it shapes how she interacts with the people in her life. Really interesting. Really love this book. The next bookish things I'm going to talk about is The Walking Dead Compendiums. These are heavy. As you can see, I have, 1, 2, and 3. And, okay, I'm putting these down. So I have reread 1 multiple times. I've read this probably like 3 or 4 times. And then I've read Compendium 2 twice. And I have yet to read the third one. Because what happens is I binge read them. And I mean, it's thick. It is thick. I don't even know if it says how many pages it is. No. I never even know what page I'm on because they're not numbered. So I just read and read and read and read. And then I go into the next one and I get really full on it. So then I kind of stop reading. But man, I know that the show, or I heard, I should say, that the show got really gory when the guy with the bat came in with Lucille. I can't remember the guy's name for the life of me. It starts with an N. I know that there was this big, huge episode where some main characters died and people got a little turned off by it. It was too gory, too graphic. And I think that's what is the big change from being able to read this and seeing it on TV. Because I'm not a gore person either. I don't like gory movies, but I really love these comics. They have all that gore. I mean, look at that. I mean, it's in black and white, but it's gory. It's a really gory comic book, but I don't think it's as bad because it is all in black and white and it's on a page too. It's not like I'm actually seeing it reenacted. So if you really enjoy the TV show before that whole episode happened, I recommend reading the comic books because I think that the comic book does it better. One character that I think everyone hates is Andrea, and Andrea's freaking badass in these comics. And then a lot of the main story plots, they do happen in the comics, just in different order. So I recommend reading the comics if that's what you like. And last, but definitely not least, this is a book that, again, I have read over and over again. I've mentioned it multiple times on my channel already, so you might be able to figure out what it is already. But that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Now, I realized just now when I was picking up this book that it has sprayed edges, and I could have used this for Owl Readathon. I still could. I haven't read my red book yet. That might happen. We'll see. We'll see. This is actually my mom's copy. As you can see, like, it's a small, y'all know this book. You see, it's a small. I have debated over the years whether to get my own copy because this is just so fragile. I don't want to ruin this book, but I love this. You follow the main character. Her name's never said, so you don't know who it is. But she meets this guy named Maxim de Winter, and they have a whirlwind romance and get married, and they move to his place, which is called Manderley. So they move to Manderley, which is kind of this spooky house in the middle of nowhere, and there's just a lot of things that seem to have their essence of Maxim's previous wife, Rebecca. And she starts to wonder what happened to Rebecca. Why isn't she in the house? This is like my definition of a rainy day read. It's just so perfect. I can read it in one sitting. I just absolutely adore this book, and I would always pick it up if I had nothing to read for a rainy day. And that's it for my top 5. If you have read any of these books, or if any of them sound interesting to you, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to sway you either one way or the other. Maybe there's a book that I didn't have on my top 5 that you think would be the perfect rainy day book. Also leave that down below because I'm always looking for another book. Well, until next time, see ya.